Hey everyone! Before we jump into our story today, I wanted to take a second and share with you something that I read this week that was super insightful and helpful, especially as we talk about Sit With Me. Arthur Brooks shared something on LinkedIn. I'm a big Arthur Brooks fan. He's a behavioral scientist. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's really awesome. He made a post on LinkedIn and he titled it, "Seek Those With Whom You Disagree." And he talks about why being with people we disagree with are important. And he says a couple things here that I think are so helpful, but I want to exchange the word disagree with different. So seek those with whom you are different, not just with who you disagree with. He says, "I believe many things. I know that many of them are wrong, but I don't know which." And he says, now how am I going to find that out? By listening to other people and by being around people who disagree with me. And I would say by being around people who are different than me. He says we should be grateful for the people with whom we disagree. We should be grateful for the people with whom we are different. And I think there's so much power in our differences. I think there's so much power in listening and hearing the stories of people that are different than us. And that's what we're doing here. I have learned so much from sitting with people that have very different lives than me. And it's not to victimize anyone's experience or to say, woe is anyone else. But it just has given me a lot of power and empathy and proximity to be able to create a stronger sense of community just within my own circles. I know that will continue to grow as we can all be intentional about seeking out people, listening, and being with people that are different than us. I'm really grateful for those of you that are here listening and doing just that. Anyway, and without further ado, we will jump into our conversation with Sallie. Sallie is here with us today. She is currently in law school. She's doing a lot of really cool work. She also identifies as lesbian. She's Asian. She's adopted. She has a lot of really interesting experiences that I learned a lot from, and I'm excited for you to be able to learn from her as well.
I was born in China, in Changsha, China, which is, if the U.S. was China, I was born in like Georgia. So southeast, really humid area. I haven't been back since though, but that's where I was born.
Okay.
And my parents, they adopted me when I was a baby. They adopted all my siblings, so that was fun. And so I grew up in Tremont, Utah, which is 15 minutes from Idaho.
So Utah. No memories of China. You were a baby.
No, I was 9 months old, so I don't remember anything.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so we lived in Tremont, which is a little bit the middle of nowhere, but it was a good place to grow up. It was fun. In Tremont, as you might imagine, there's not a ton of racial diversity. And so it was different. We were the only family that had kids that were from other places. And so
where else were your siblings from?
So one of my sisters from China, another brother from China, different parts of China though, and then one brother from India, and then a sister she was born in the U.S., but she's half Filipino.
Okay. And what was your parents, like, that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, so they got married a little bit later than probably the average age was at that time, and they just were unable to have kids, but they really wanted to have kids. So at the time, the adoption with China had more options than other places. If you try to adopt in the U.S., sometimes it's a really long wait. And so this was another opportunity for them. So they adopted my oldest sister first, but at the time, China had a rule, you can only have one kid from us. That's it. Once you're done, someone other family has to come.
Oh, interesting.
But then they ended up having too many babies, so they're like, just kidding, you can have more. So that's why they got my other sister from the U.S. through, I'm not sure what it's called now or if they still do it, but I think it was LDS Family Services or something. Okay. Somehow it was through a church program.
Okay.
And that was more what you think, where like the mom could like read your bio and look at pictures and decide who her first preference was. And then after that, the China changed their rules, so they came and got me. And then they got Sam, who's my youngest brother from India. And then Jacob, who is in between me and Sam, he was a little older, and they got him when he was 3, I think.
Okay. So everyone was adopted still pretty young.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. What a fun dynamic to have. Okay, anyway, back. You're in Tremont.
I lived in a small town, and I was homeschooled. All my siblings were homeschooled through high school, and then we went to a private school for a little bit. And for the most part, people were really good about it. I think all the adults probably didn't really care all that much. It didn't matter to them. But there were some things when I think about that were, I think, just people's, probably their ignorance. And I don't think they meant anything by it, but just made me feel very aware that I was different. So, for example, I remember one time I told somebody, I was probably like 8, little girl, I said, oh, my favorite princess is Ariel, because I liked the mermaid. I thought it was cool. And someone told me, you can't like her. And I was like, why not? And they're like, you don't look like her. I was like, what do you mean? None of us look like mermaids. And they're like, you have to like Mulan because she's Chinese. And I was like, I don't think so. And also, then you can't like Ariel either because you're not a mermaid. Just stuff like that, which I don't think they meant anything by it. Just silly things people say. But just things like that where people sometimes were just not thinking, I think.
Yeah.
People sometimes also would make comments like, oh, you're good at math because you're Chinese. And I was like, I also do my homework and try to learn this stuff. And also, it just comes more naturally to me than another topic, but I don't think it has to do with who I am. So just things like that. And when I'm thinking about other parts of my identity, I remember probably like middle school, 10 years old, kind of 8 years old too, all my friends were suddenly having crushes on boys. And I was like, they're the lowest priority on my list. I just want to hang out and play. Why do we have to talk about boys? Everything's just such a waste of a conversation to talk about it like primary or something. And I was like, this is so dumb. I hate this. And it made me aware I don't really like any of the boys that I know. I don't really care. I just don't think about it. But I was like, all right, I guess this is what we're doing now that we're older.
And how old are you at this point, were you saying?
Probably like middle school, like 10 or 12 or something.
Yeah.
So I noticed this and I'm like, I don't really feel that way, but okay, whatever. I also think as far as that goes, so I should probably say I identify as a lesbian. At the time, obviously, I didn't know that. And I think I took some time to figure that out. I didn't really realize that until I was in my last year of college. I was 21, 22. And I think part of it, there's a lot of reasons. One of it was when I was a kid, that wasn't really a thing people talked about, and definitely not with kids. It was something that was a little bit in the political sphere, but again, I didn't know anything about that. No one ever told me that when I was a kid. That wasn't a thing. And so I just never really thought about it. And I was also raised in the LDS church, and they have a pretty strong, maybe not purity culture is the right word, but that's what I've heard associated with just the idea of you shouldn't really date a lot when you're younger, and don't have sex before marriage, don't really get into too many serious relationships, or only date for marriage, just that idea. And there's also a rule where for a while there was this an unspoken rule that you weren't really supposed to go on dates until you were 16. And so I didn't have to think about this for 16 years of my life, so I was like, I don't care, I'm not going to think about this, whatever. So I just didn't really make it a big issue. And with the way that society is, generally, it was assumed that men would ask the women. So I was like, I don't even have to worry about asking anybody. I'm just going to sit here until they ask me.
You just write it out.
Yeah, so I didn't really have to worry about it too much. I also think another thing that probably impacted me a lot was when we would watch movies and there was like a romantic plot, my parents would often comment on it, whether they thought it was like good or bad, healthy or not healthy, like the relationship itself. And so I think they instilled in me a really strong sense of this is something I will accept in a relationship and this is something I will not. Like I remember there's movies or shows where there's like domestic violence and they would say, if someone ever does that to you, you should leave and never go back. It was a very strong message. So I think it encouraged me to be like, oh, since I don't really like anybody around here, I shouldn't settle, and so I'm not gonna, try to pursue anything.
So at this point, you recognize this about yourself. You're not diving into it because you don't need to. But are you like telling anyone your concerns?
A little bit. I told my sisters a little bit because they were getting into boys, and I was like, I don't know, whatever. My sister would be like, who's your crush at school? I'm like,
Don't have any.
I don't know.
You're the second oldest?
I'm the third.
The third. So you have two older sisters.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. So they were both starting to like boys and like romance novels and stuff. And so I was like, I'll read them since you like them, but I don't really like what it seems boring to me to have the whole plot just be like, oh no, they end up together. So I talked to them, but they were like, it's fine. Just, I'm sure when you're older, you'll like boys. Or my sister told me like, I like a lot more boys in college than I did in high school. They're like, just more my personality, more the people I'd want to hang out with. So I was like, maybe in college I'll just figure it out then. I was also pretty shy when I was younger, so I didn't ever approach guys either. So I was like, maybe it's just because I don't really talk to them.
Yeah.
Not
so
really
no one
sure.
really saw it as like a problem or like something to fix, just kind of, oh, this is just, you're not there yet.
Yeah, just kind of, you'll grow out of this, you'll get there kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was how I was when I was young. I was also pretty, maybe hard-headed is a good word for it. I just remember this one experience when I was a little kid, probably like 8 or 10, and I realized, oh, girls change their last names usually when they marry guys to the guy's last name, because my mom has a maiden name, but my dad doesn't have something like that. He's just McGuire. And I was like, why is that? I asked my dad, and he's like, it's just the way people do things, and it makes it like easier to group families together and just all those reasons. And I was like, why don't they just change their name to the girl's name? And he's like, we just don't really do it like this. I guess you can, but I was just so outraged. I was like, I'm never going to change my name. He'll have to change his name to my image. That's that kind of personality too. You know. Something that interesting that happened, I'm trying to remember if it was 2012 or 2015, but around then, right before the Supreme Court ruled on Obergefell, which was the case that decided that gay marriage should be recognized in all the states and should be legal and all that. And I remember people talking about it a lot in church, but they didn't say what gay people were, but I just knew there was this out there that apparently was bad that we're talking about a lot, and a lot of people were very worried about it. I remember some people said, if they pass gay marriage, like, that's the end of America.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
I remember the same thing. I think I was, like, similar age, too, where it's like, you don't really get it yet. You just know there's something bad about it.
Yeah. So I asked my parents about it, and they told me, but I didn't get it. They're just like, it's when a guy wants to marry a guy, and I was like, okay, like, I don't really see how that's, like, a huge problem, but I guess it is. I don't really get, like, what the fight's about. I didn't even realize that they couldn't get married before. I didn't know much.
Yeah,
so I was like, okay. But I think I did incorporate some of the fear a little bit around it. I think people were just a little uncertain about the future, and there's a little bit of a holdover from the fear over the AIDS crisis that happened in the 90s. Obviously, I don't remember that. It wasn't alive really then. But I think there was kind of that holdover and kind of that social feeling of, we know gay people exist, but we wish they would stay in the corner and not bother us kind of idea. And so
fear of the unknown, really.
Yeah. So I remember people being really afraid of it. So I got a little afraid, even though I wasn't even sure what I was afraid of. But I was like, I guess I'm afraid too, because everyone's freaking out.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'm also a little scared. So at that point, we keep talking about it. It seems like it's a bad thing. So I guess it is, but I'm not even really sure what it is all the way.
Yeah.
There was I think there was a girl or maybe a couple kids in my high school who identified as bi, but I didn't really know them. They weren't my friends. I just heard about it. So I didn't really have any connection to them. But I was like, okay. I thought this was like an adult thing, but maybe it's not. And so that was going on as I was going through high school. And another funny note that I now realize looking back, so there were two guys in my high school who I was like, I would actually be okay going on a few dates with them and actually getting to know them. And funny enough, now they're both gay. So I'm like, maybe I just had a really good gaydar. I don't know what that was. But I was like, that is really funny. Yeah. I was like, hilarious. It might just be coincidence, but anyway.
2, though. That's pretty.
No, I was like, wow, 2 for 2. But
that's funny.
Anyway. So I'm going through that, and then between my junior and senior year of high school, so that summer, I went to China with my sister. So I went back to China, not to the place I was born. I went more in the Beijing, which is a little farther north.
Yeah.
But I went back with my sister. We taught English for 8 weeks, and we did it in like a group. So we didn't go alone, but.
And did you speak Chinese? No.
I only spoke English, but they actually wanted only English speakers because they wanted to be it's supposed to be like an immersion program, so they're not supposed to be able to speak to us in Chinese. But yes, we had to have a translator because I don't speak any Chinese. I took French in high school.
So what was that like? Were the people there like, why don't you speak Chinese?
Yeah, a lot of people, I had people sometimes walk up and try to ask me for help on their map. They would point and ask me a question. I was like, I don't know what you're asking. I can't read this map. I don't know anything.
And was that frustrating to you? Were you like, I wish I would have had learned Chinese? Or at this point, you're like, no, not really. It's just not really part of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really cool. I didn't really feel like I missed out too much on it, but it was interesting to see how my life could have been if I hadn't been adopted or just if I'd been born into a different family or something. It was really interesting, and it's really weird to go somewhere as an adult when I guess I wasn't technically an adult yet, but when you're grown and you can speak and read and you understand the world around you, and then to go somewhere where I can't even read the signs because they're in characters, so they're not written out in pinyin usually. Yeah. So I can't even read the sign. It was very weird. I was like, I almost feel like a child again, where I can hear people talking, but I have no idea what they're saying. I can't even hear the words. So it's a very interesting experience. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. I was really glad I got to go back to China, the place where I was born, because I don't obviously remember anything about it the first time. And I was very unprepared. I didn't even know how to eat with chopsticks, so it was trial by fire, just got thrown in. I was because they have some force, but not really. Usually they give you chopsticks and a spoon. But it was a really fun experience. My sister, like I said, went with me, Kimberly, because she's the one from China, so we went together.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun, but there were some really, I think, important things that happened on that trip for me. One of them was, this sounds silly because now it's a little bit more inclusive, but I remember growing up, models, they were only white people. Yeah. Sometimes you might have a couple African-American or maybe someone just of another race, but mostly even commercials for medicine stuff is only ever, I feel like, white people and definitely a lot of people in Hollywood, people who are held up as models or people who's really pretty actors or actresses, they're almost always white people. And it's the other people were just kind of sidekick people, they were the funny people or they were the smart people, but they weren't the one who you thought were pretty. They weren't the main love interest. They weren't the main character. And again, this has changed as I've grown older, but I remember that a lot when I was younger.
You were aware of that.
Yeah, and I think more subconsciously because it more surprised me when I went to China, and obviously because mostly they have Chinese people. Yeah. Most of their movies, they watch Hollywood movies, but they make their own, and most of them obviously star people who are Chinese. Yeah. And a lot of models for advertising campaigns. They're not going to ship someone all the way from America. They're just going to use a Chinese person. Yeah. And so it's interesting to see that portrayed in that light. Again, I don't think it was anything insidious from someone or something, but it's just that idea where it's oh yeah, I guess I haven't really seen someone who looks like me be portrayed as somebody who is really beautiful on a makeup ad or something. Yeah. It's usually some other kind of person. So that was one of the really interesting things that I took away from that trip. I think before the trip, mixed with teenage insecurity, I felt very, I wish I didn't look the way I did. I kind of wish I was just like everybody else and didn't have all these things that were different about me. But coming back from it, I was like, no, I'm really proud of where I come from, and I really like the culture of China and stuff. Obviously, they have their problems. The people and just the way they are and different things, I was like, I've really grown to have an appreciation of that by going. And so I think that was something that was really good for me to take away from that trip.
That's really cool. Have you been back since?
I have not. My visa is about to expire because it was like a really long visa. But you get to re-enter so many times within a time limit.
So even though you were born there, though, you don't have, what would you say, citizenship?
No.
You can't just go whenever you want.
You can't have dual citizenship between China and the U.S.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So when I was technically a Chinese citizen, and then when I came to the U.S.,
You just
my
switched.
parents, switched it. So you have to revoke the one. But interestingly, you don't for India. So my brother Sam, they didn't realize because they just figured it had done that, but you have to go and say you don't want it because you can have dual citizenship. So they just assumed he did want it. So he actually had both. He didn't realize that until he was going on his mission. He's sending in his papers and they're like, something's wrong. And he's like, what do you mean? This is the only information I have.
Yeah.
Well, it says you're an Indian citizen. He's like, what? I don't know that.
Really?
So you can for India, but not for China. So yeah.
I didn't know
don't have
that.
Chinese citizenship.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to get a visa and passport and all that. Another really interesting thing that I think was really good for me when I went to China was my sister, a couple of her friends came with her on the trip. And one of them was a guy friend, and he was really good friends with Kimberly, and so I became friends with him because I was hanging out with him. And then I said, I think maybe he likes you because he hangs out with you a lot. That's me knowing what love is at the time. He hangs out with you. And she's I don't think he does. I was like, how do you know? And she's like, because he's gay. And I was like, what?
Oh.
And I was like shocked because, again, I hadn't really met anybody in that sphere at all. Again, I'd heard of some people, and I heard talk about it, but I didn't actually know anybody at the time. Obviously, now I know that I knew people, but they just didn't know either. And I was really startled by that. And I was like, oh no, should I not be friends with them because they're gay? Am I supposed to do that? Because at one point, I remember my parents told me, like, oh, if you have a gay friend who gets married, you shouldn't go to the wedding because that's showing you support them, and that's not good. So I was like, oh no, can I not be friends with them? But I was like, Kimberly's friends with them, and she goes to BYU, so it can't be that bad. So I was like, I think he's fun to hang out with, so I don't want to stop hanging out with him. So I was like, okay, I'll just keep hanging out with him, which obviously for me, that was an earth-shattering thing. To him, it's like, whatever. He didn't even notice, I'm sure. But I remember thinking, I was like, oh. And then after that, I was like, he was very normal. For some reason, I thought he was going to be really weird or something, or I thought
Or bad?
there was, or some kind of way that you would be like, whoa, that's somebody you don't want to hang out with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was something really impactful. So I remember coming back from that and thinking a lot about it. And all the messages before I was told was, oh, these people are dangerous and scary. Maybe stay away from them. But I don't know. He was really normal. He just seemed like a regular dude. So I don't know. He seemed fine to me. So I think that was good also because it gave me somebody real that I had met. So I think that was also a very good experience for me. So after that, finished out high school, went to college. And I went to college in Southern Virginia University, which is in this really small town. It's spelled Buena Vista, but they all say, no, you need to say Univista, which I'm like, that's a really weird way of saying it, but okay.
Univista?
Yeah, they have a story about it. That's probably not true. But the story is that during the Revolutionary War, they decided that they would start all saying it different so that if there's a spy that came in and they'd only read it off the map, they would say it the proper way and then they could tell that they were a spy.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure how many spies were actually going out there because it's rural Virginia.
Middle of nowhere.
But that's the story. So,
Okay, that's funny.
but that's the school that I went to. It was really awesome. I really enjoyed it. You had a lot of really small classes. I think, probably smaller than my law school classes even now because I had some classes where there was like 5 of us, 5 students and a teacher.
Wow.
Which was really good for my major because my major was philosophy, so a lot of discussion-based, a lot of talking and thinking. So it worked out really well for that, and I really enjoyed it. I loved my professors, and it was cool because there weren't a ton of them, so you ended up taking repeats a lot with the same professor, but it was really cool because you got to know them and get to go a little bit deeper into the subjects and stuff with them. So that was my college experience, and a few things happened there. So in high school, I did a lot of like fine arts music stuff. So I did piano, violin, and choir, very music-y.
Okay.
I did a little bit of theater, just like the tiniest bit, but it wasn't really my thing. In college, I was like, maybe I'll just keep doing choir because I really liked choir. And it's one that I'd done the shortest amount of time, so I was like, I want to keep doing more for it. So I went and I was going to choir, and my roommate was on the basketball team. And I was like, okay. Now, in high school, I did not like sports at all. Like, I would not watch them. One time my parents got free tickets or somehow, and they made me go, probably because I was a minor, couldn't be left alone. But I was like, I don't want to go. They're like, you have to go. And so I was like, fine. So go. And I brought books and I walked around the stadium 3 times because what am I supposed to do? I can't leave. I was so bored. I don't really remember what happened to the score or anything. So my roommate's in the basketball team. And I'm like, oh, great. We have nothing in common. But I was like, okay, sounds good. Maybe I'll go to your game. And I was like, I need to try and make friends.
Yeah, I have to do this.
Yeah, so one time I really was very bored. So this shows you how bored I was. I was like, okay, I'll go watch their practice because I was like, it's only 2 hours and at least they'll do different stuff. So I went and watched their practice and it was so interesting. And I actually think it helped that I went to practice first.
Yeah.
Because growing up, my parents, they liked sports, but they didn't really watch them all the time. I guess they cheer for the Cougars because they went here, but they're not like super hardcore,
people.
like by the jersey, like game day. It was like, no, we watch it if we had the cable or whatever, or we'll read the highlights after the game, but it wasn't like a huge priority thing. And so I did not grow up understanding how sports worked. I knew like a touchdown was 6 points and then you can try and get a 7th one. And I knew basketball, you try to get the basketball through the hoop, but I didn't understand like the strategy. I didn't know why they called things. I didn't know why you were switching sides. I didn't understand any of that. So I think that's partly why I didn't enjoy it because I didn't understand it. And we didn't watch it enough, so it wasn't really interesting.
Yeah.
But watching the practice, I was like, oh, I understand what they're doing, and I've seen people do that in the games. So I was like, oh, that must be what they're trying to practice for. So I was like, maybe I'll just come hang out, because surprise, there wasn't a lot to do in Buena Vista. So I was like, I'll come hang out and watch and do my homework. And then the coach was like, if you want to be the manager, you can be the manager, and then you can get school credit for it and stuff. And then you can hang out with us since you're already here anyway. And I was like, okay, sure, why not?
Okay.
Not knowing anything about sports, I was just like, okay, sure. I don't really know what a manager does, but okay. So I did that my first year, and I really liked it. So I actually quit choir because it's hard to do 2 extracurricular activities. It was a D3 school, so it wasn't really like top tier collegiate, still time commitment. So I was like, okay, I'm going to drop choir and I'm going to do basketball, which was so much fun. I really enjoyed that. It was a really great experience. Got to go to all the games. That was super fun. So now I understand basketball a little better. I don't know all the stats about the players or anything like that, but now I can like at least watch a game and understand.
And you enjoy it.
Yeah, and enjoy it and be like, okay, that was like a good thing, or that was not a good idea.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it was a really good experience in that way, and I made a lot of friends on the basketball team. It was a lot of fun. And it was an interesting experience again because there were some people on the basketball team who, surprise, were lesbian. Obviously, I did not know that. And so then I remember my roommate one time told me, like, oh, yeah, this person broke up. And I'm like, they were dating? Like, I didn't even know they were dating. What? I'm so, like, behind the times. But so that was a really interesting thing. Again, I got to meet more people that were just people that I knew first, and then I learned this about them later. And I was like, I like them as a person, and what am I going to do? Ignore them no, I'm not going to do that.
BYU has a very strict honor code. BYU Hawaii is the same. Is SVU the same? If a couple is dating on the field or on a team, did that present challenges? Was it like a secret? Is that kind of why you didn't know? Or what was it like at SVU in regards to like the culture around LGBTQ?
Yeah, it was much more relaxed than BYU.
Oh.
They've changed their honor code so it's even more relaxed. I think it's now something like we're honest in our academic work and I don't remember, we're kind to everyone, something like that.
Very
like
low.
Pretty vague. Even compared to BYU's, it was much more vague. They didn't really have a dress and grooming standard. I think they just had something like we dress respectfully for the occasion or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They did have a rule against premarital sex, but they didn't really follow up with anybody. It was just like there in case. I feel like it was more like it's there in case you don't want to do it, so you can say, I can't, I have my honor code. So you kind of have a backup plan kind of thing or support. But
no enforcement.
No fault. I guess you could report it, but the person over the honor code didn't pursue anything. They might write it down. They would pursue stuff if it was like a Title IX problem. Yeah. If people just want to hang out with their boyfriend, they're like, whatever.
Oh, okay.
It was very different. They did also have a rule like no alcohol on campus and stuff and whatever. So they had rules like that. I don't remember if they had a coffee rule or a tea rule. They definitely had an alcohol one.
So is it considered, from the student's perspective, a church school? Do you have a devotional? Are you required to take religion classes?
There is a devotional. They come every Friday, but it varies. It's not always a church topic. Like sometimes people would come and present like research of stuff they're doing.
Not the same as here too, though.
Yeah, so it was a devotional on Friday. We weren't like required to go or anything, but we didn't have to take religion classes. They had institute, but it was pass fail, and everyone took it because it was like in college. Of course, you're gonna take the pass fail that you can take and move on, have a class that's less stressful. So everybody ended up like basically taking institute classes, but you weren't required to. You didn't have to.
So there wasn't like this scary feeling of queer culture.
No, and there wasn't. I don't think there was a requirement to attend church. I think they encouraged it, but I don't think there was a requirement.
Okay.
So yeah, it was much more relaxed, and so I think I just didn't know because they kept it pretty low key, and they weren't like making out the bleachers, so I didn't know.
The middle of the game.
Yeah, so they were like being super obvious about it, and I think they were keeping it low key, but I guess everybody on the basketball team apparently did except me, so I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, so it was, again, one of those experiences where you meet people, at least for me, and then I learned that later, and I was like, oh, I feel like I'm not going to stop being their friend.
Yeah.
And I was like, which they broke up, but I was like, if they stayed together, I was like, if they had gotten married and they invited me, I'd probably go to their wedding. I know them, they're my friends. Like, why would I not go? And so it was a chance for me to be on my own. I was in a place where I felt like it was a safe environment, but also a place where I could explore a little bit, you know, what I was feeling and stuff. And something that I had noticed when I was younger, but I just wrote it off, was I was like, I do feel a lot closer with my female friends, and I don't have a lot of guy friends. I have some, but if they were to show interest, I wouldn't really want to pursue anything with any of them, and I would rather we just stay friends. And I was like, maybe if I try and think of what an ideal guy might be like that I would want to date, I was like, I don't know. I can think of like general characteristics that I like, but I can't really imagine this actual person. And so it was something interesting for me. And then sometimes I would talk to those people and be like, how did you figure out that you were lesbian? Because sometimes, you know, on the female side, I can't really speak to the gay side because I don't know, I'm not a dude. But women are encouraged to have female friends, and you can get really personal. You can talk about really deep things that you might not talk about with other people, or you might text each other a lot or hang out a lot, or just things that you would also do in a romantic relationship. And so sometimes it's hard to tell, am I just really good friends with them, or do I like them? It's really hard to tell like what it is. And women can, you know, give each other hugs and stuff. Sometimes men don't really touch each other, so it's okay. I just can't tell.
Yeah, the line is so not blurred, but I see what you're saying. It's very different for a gay man versus a
And so I was like, okay, I don't really know. But I think what kind of really happened for me was I noticed I was like, in my female relationships, my friendships, I do feel very connected. I feel a lot of like investment in the relationship as friends at the time. I'm like, I would not pursue somebody obviously who wouldn't, because that doesn't make sense. But if I was a guy, would I want to date them? And I was like, yes, I would, which is really interesting. Not just even like, oh, this person should treat her better, but I'm like, I almost wish that I were so that I could.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is what everyone thinks. Some people might play with the idea, but that is something really interesting to me. Because I was like, it's almost like as if there wasn't some rule that was keeping me back that I would want to do that just as I was. But I'm like, I don't really want to be a guy, but if I were, this is what I would do.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of something that I started to really think about. I came to college and I still don't really like guys. And that was
supposed to be the change for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, I can't even say this because sometimes I would say in high school, I was like, boys are so dumb. So I was like, I don't want to date you dumb boys. But I was like, they're not really dumb. Some of them are. But at a different place now and we're all adults. And so I was like, I don't know. I just am not really feeling it. And I'd gone on dates with guys. I'd kissed guys and stuff. And I was just like, I don't know. It's fine, but if I never did it again, I wouldn't even be sad. I'd be like, great, now I don't have to worry about dating anymore. So it was like kind of this weird relationship I had with it where I was like, I don't even seem to really like it. And so my senior year, I started to think about it more, and this is when I knew more people on the team, and some people were in a relationship with other members on the team, so I could ask them, like, what is it like, and, like, how do you feel about these things? Because I was a little closer, so I was like, obviously not going to ask that a random person. And I was like, I think that kind of makes sense with how I feel. And I was like, if I think about if I were to go on a date with a woman, would I be excited for the date? I'm like, I think so. Like, when I have a date with a guy, I'm excited in the sense of, oh, it's someone new and we're going to go do something and I'm anticipating an event that hopefully I like. Yeah. But I'm like, if I could go on that event without that person, I'd be just as fine. I'd be like, okay, I just want to go see this movie, or I just want to go eat at this place. But I don't really want to do it with you. Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, I think so. So I was able to explore that in college a little bit and just think more about it. And it was something that really scared me at first because I was like, I don't know. I haven't really like dated girls or kissed girls, so I don't know. Like maybe you're supposed to do that first before.
This might be a personal question, but when you like would kiss a guy, were you like, this is gross, or were you just like, it's fine?
I was just kind of like, it's fine.
So it wasn't like gross to you?
No, it wasn't like super gross, but I was like, that's as far as I would want to go. Yeah, like, nothing else. More touching and stuff. I'd be like, I don't really want to do that. Let's just kiss. And I was like, I'll kiss for like a couple minutes. And then I'm like, okay, we should do something else. Like, we should go get food or something. I'm bored of kissing you. Like, I'm tired of it. Okay. Which I'm sure to the guys were like, what is happening? They're probably like, oh no, I'm a bad kisser. I'm like, well, actually it was me, not you. But that's funny. But yeah, so it's just like this neutral feeling where it's like, it's kind of like sitting in a class with your board. You're like, I kind of want this to be over. No, but it's fine. I guess I have to be here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Another really good thing about college was that there was a lot of more diversity at Southern Virginia University. Even just like the fact that the geographical area, but also a lot of people go for sports, and sports tend to be a little bit more diverse because they can pull from a few more different groups and stuff. So there's a lot of diversity in that way. And I was like, oh, this is nice to have people who are different. And it was also just a variety of different experiences, people who just lived in different places or done different things or came from different backgrounds. And it was really interesting to talk to them. And I think it really gave me more of an appreciation for people who were not just the people I'd lived around my whole life. Not that there's anything wrong with them or anything, but just I heard that story a million times. And that was also a really good thing that kind of made me feel a little better about like my racial identity, because I was like, oh yeah, these are people who are all different and they're just here to have fun or go to college, play sports, whatever. And we can all get along, we can all be friends, and we're not really people that we've known before, so we're all on the same page in that way. We're all coming to college, and it's new for all of us. And it was just a really good experience, I think, again, for me to experience more diversity and have more appreciation for that, and then also for my own diversity. Instead of feeling how I did before, I was like, I do wish I was the same, or I wish I looked different or acted different or just something.
So did you feel more confident in yourself?
Yeah,
Did you feel like you were beautiful?
Yes, I did start to feel that way, which was really nice.
Because you are. I'm like sitting here looking at you, and I'm like, and then also, but it hurts me to see you as a little child still thinking all little kids are beautiful, and even I'm glad you were able to find that.
No, yeah, I think that was part of it, coming to just like yourself more.
Yeah.
And not feeling like everything about you was like, oh, I don't like this or this, which I think a lot of people struggle with, but sometimes you just cling on to one thing. And for me, that was race. I was like, oh, I'm not pretty because I'm Chinese. Yeah. That was another big thing that happened in college. So after college,
So you graduated from SVU, philosophy degree, and then you go.
I should have recapped. Yes.
No, it's okay.
Philosophy degree, psych minor.
And you haven't gone on a date with a girl? You haven't pursued anything like
No,
lesbian
not
per
that
se
point.
in undergrad?
No, nothing like that. I had thought about more because the crush thing. I was like, if I think about girls that I thought were attractive when I was younger, I could name like a lot of them, like celebrities, people I knew, things like that. And so that's kind of part of the thing where I was like, I think this kind of makes sense and this kind of like matches a lot of how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at that point I hadn't done anything with it. And then in between college and law school, because I just went straight through, I went to Ireland for a summer. So I went for 8 weeks.
Fun.
It was a lot of fun. I helped with immigration paperwork for people who are immigrating into Ireland. A lot of people were refugees or just coming from really difficult backgrounds. So a lot of people from like the Middle East, because at the time, I believe, which there probably still is, there was a lot of contention or something in one of the countries or somewhere. So people were leaving that place a lot and coming here and or coming to Ireland and trying to immigrate in. So we'd help them get their papers together. And I did that for summer, and it was a lot of fun. And it was also really good because my last name, McGuire, obviously not my genes, but my last name comes from Ireland. And so it was really cool to go back to the place where at some point my family had come from.
Yeah.
That was my dad's side. And so that was a really good experience. And it really opened my eyes to, again, another different kind of worldview of how things work and how things can be. And it was just a really good experience for me, I think, in that way as well. So
What an amazing opportunity. That's pretty cool.
yeah, it was super fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
Before I went in the summer, though, obviously I had applied the cycle before for law school. It's kind of like college where you apply the year, your senior year to get in your next year. And I really had wanted to go to UNC. Sorry, BYU Law. I really wanted to go there. I wanted to stay on the East Coast. I thought North Carolina was really pretty. Also, at that point, I still like basketball, but I was really more into basketball. So I was like, I need to go somewhere that has a good basketball school. Even though I wasn't going to play basketball in law school, but I was like, this would be so cool if I could go somewhere that had a good basketball team so I could like go to the college games and stuff. But I applied to BYU because I was like, they don't charge for the application fees. So I was like, it's free. I can't really.
Might as well do it.
Might as well just throw it in there. So I got accepted to BYU and then not UNC. So sad. I was like, no. I was like, do I wait for the next year? This is how upset I was. Do I wait for the next year? I don't know. But part of it also was I want to stay in the East Coast. But part of it was at this point I'd figured out my sexual orientation. And I was like, would it be a bad idea for me to go to BYU? You know, which kind of speaks to your second question. I'm happy to say my experience at BYU has been very positive, and I have not felt like anyone really has said or done anything that's really made me be like, oh, like I maybe shouldn't talk to you about this ever.
Good.
So I am happy to say that's a really good thing. But I was really worried because my sister, she went to BYU undergrad and she did her master's in accounting here. So she was here for a while. And she was here when BYU protested some stuff in the honor code. One of them was a Title IX being separated from the honor code office, and one was changing the honor code at all to change it from just being homosexual to just acting homosexual, basically. And she told me about it, and she kind of told me how she felt about it, which she was like, I think it's fine if they're, like, I don't think we should discriminate people just because they're gay. That's not something you can really control. And what if you don't know till you're already in college? Like, sometimes you don't know before you go. So the idea, like, you signed up for it, but if you didn't know, then not really.
Yeah.
And so I was worried. I was like, I don't know if that sentiment's still there, but I know that there were students who protested on either side. So I know there is, like, some kind of diverse opinions on it, which kind of is good.
And does your sister, when she's telling you that story, does she know where you stand?
At that time, no. I told my siblings right after it was right before I went to law school. So it would have been in the fall. But at that time, I think that was like 2019, I can't remember. It was before 2020 because she graduated in 2020. But it was a little before then. I'm not exactly sure what year it was. So she didn't know. I didn't know at that time either. So I was just like, oh, yeah, taking it in, thinking about what do I think about this. So I was a little worried for that reason to come to BYU at first. And I thought about it a lot. And I was like, well, maybe I should just go to this other school that I got into in this other place. maybe I should go here. I don't know. And I prayed about it a little bit, and I was like, I guess Jesus didn't want me to go to UNC. But I was like, if you want me to go to BYU, then I'll go to BYU. If this is something I really think that I should do, then I'm going to go ahead and start going for it, playing my first deposit, finding a lease and stuff. And if you don't want me to go here, then you need to put some roadblocks so that I know, okay, this is not the right path to go down.
Yeah.
Apparently UNC was done. So I was like, okay. I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And everything went well, went fine. So it's like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing now. And I really did want to go to law school. So I was like, I know it'll be a good law school. I know it'll be a good education. So I was just worried about maybe, I was like, I don't know, maybe the professors, maybe the people here. I wasn't sure. Went to Ireland, came back, went to law school. And it was law school. It was intense sometimes, a lot of reading and stuff. But there are some really great people. I would say, like I said, like all the people I've met anyway have been really kind. It's not like I tell everybody. It's not like I introduce myself. Hi, Sallie, I'm a lesbian. No, I don't say that. Yeah. Just like from comments people say and from the way that people act or talk about things, you can just get a sense of things, which I think was the other question you asked me about, the feeling of belonging at BYU. I think a lot of it is there's a lot of stuff that seeps in subconsciously that you might not notice. Like maybe... can't really think of a good example, but like for instance, I remember when I was younger, sometimes people would stop watching a show or refuse to watch a show or movie if there's any showing of anyone gay in it. Like even if they weren't actually doing anything, it was just like, oh, if we think there might be a gay character, that's it, we're not going to watch it.
Yeah.
And so when people express that idea, even though you might actually also feel like, oh, but I do support equal rights for marriage, that's not the impression somebody would receive. Yeah. And what you're subconsciously sending a message of is if there is someone like that, then I don't want to associate with them at all. Even that I can't even watch a piece of media with them in it. Which again, nobody at BYU has told me this, but just as something before where it could be something where you're saying or doing something that is expressing this idea of I don't associate with those people or I can't fathom how someone could be like that. And so I can't deal with it. You know? So it kind of gives the idea of maybe I should never ever let this person know because then they won't hang out with me maybe, or maybe they're going to think something weird about me or maybe just anything. It can be hard because we say our opinions about a lot of things all the time and may not realize what it all means. But I think thinking there could be someone that is struggling with something, could be anything. Yeah. And having that empathy towards it, even if you don't really agree with it, even if you don't really like it, but expressing that you understand how someone could be like that or think that way, you just don't agree with it, even that is still something where it's okay, this person would at least hopefully understand if they ever were to learn this about me, and it hopefully wouldn't be something that would stop us from having a relationship and having a friendship.
Or at least even just care about you. You can care about someone, like you said, and not... I don't like saying the not agree with them or you don't have to. I don't love saying that because it's like, what's there to agree with necessarily? I don't know, but I think at the end of the day, it's like you can still care about someone no matter what they're doing with their life. Like you said, if it's anything, you can still care about you as an individual.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, some things that I've done find belonging here, besides just normal stuff, making friends. One thing that's really helped me was there's this place called Encircle. And it's
I wanted to hear about this.
Yeah, it's by the Provost City Temple, kind of, Center City, whatever.
Yeah.
That one. The one that has the red brick. That one. And it's just this house. There's a few locations. I think there's one in Salt Lake and St. George or something. So I obviously just go to the Provo one. But they have events almost every single night of the week, except for the weekends. But they just have different activities or things where people can just come together and just be in a safe space and kind of be able to talk about a little more with people that they know are safe. Yeah. You don't have to associate with any school or anything to go there. You can just go. It's free and everything. So I go on Monday nights because that's when Lesbian Circle is, which is just people who identify as lesbian. We just hang out in a room and just chat about our lives or anything. And then also on Monday nights, they do dinner. So it's like a stand-in family home evening kind of idea, but just where you like meet with people your age and hang out and talk and make friends and that kind of thing. And you don't have to sign up for anything. You can just go when you can. I can't remember what all the other nights are. Like one's a music night, one's an art night. So if you're going to activities, you can go on the activity nights and do an activity instead of just sit around and talk. But that's the one that works best for my schedule is Monday nights. So that's when I go. And I've really enjoyed that. Again, it's interesting to just hear other people's experiences. And it's also just good to be around people that are like you. Like the China thing where it's like, even if you don't really feel all that different, but just being around someone who's like you or understands that can make a really big difference and can just make you feel a little more comfortable with yourself and just you're also able to talk about things or ask questions about things that other people may not be able to. They might be really nice and want to help, but they may not be able to really help you or understand that or have an answer. Yeah. And so it's really good to just go. I've really enjoyed just going and hanging out and being able to talk to different people and getting to know different people, like some people from UVU. So obviously I have no other way of running into them because I'm never going to see them. So it's cool to just talk to them or even just hear stuff. They'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm in this program. And I'll ask, oh, what kind of things do you study? What kind of classes do you take? What's that like? and stuff like that. That's been a really good and helpful thing. And I'm very lucky. I told my siblings and they all were like, yeah, we don't really care. But like, that's great. We're happy for you, but it doesn't really change anything,
yeah.
which was really great. I know people don't always have that support system, so that can be really hard if their family is not very accepting of it. So that's been really good. And then I told my parents, and I think they were a little, we don't really know what to do with this info, but okay, sounds good.
So they handled it relatively.
I think so.
Well,
they didn't disown me, which is good.
We'll take it.
But I think they're a little, like I said, they were a little older when they got married, so they're a little older when they had kids and stuff. And so they lived through the AIDS crisis and being really worried about that. So I think they just were not really sure like how to feel about this all the way. But we also know like things have been different. Most things have changed with time. So they're like, okay.
So this was like 3 years ago? You told them? And how is it now?
We don't talk about it a ton, I'll be honest. But I'm the opinion where I'm like, I don't really start with explaining that I'm lesbian, but I also won't really like always coddle you if you make, I don't know, maybe not coddle you, but I'll correct you a little bit subtly. Yeah. So like, for instance, if someone's, oh, what kind of guys do you think are like hot of like actors or whatever? I'll be like, actually, I like women and these are the ones I think are hot. Yeah. Just stuff like that, where I think it's not something I don't really, I'm like, that's just what I think and that's cool. And so I think with my parents, they have been pretty good at using, I think, more like neutral language, not saying, oh, your future boyfriend or husband, but being like, oh, your future spouse. Okay. And being open to that. So we haven't really talked about it a ton, but I think they're figuring it out on their own. They're the kind of people who like to go and think about it and then decide what they want to do. So it'll be interesting to see how that all changes out.
It's a lot. A lot of times we talk about, for you, it was scary to go through this transition, but you had 10 years, you're like navigating this, and then you tell them, and it's only been 3 years since they've even known, so they also have to go on this journey of destigmatizing and removing fear, and it's valid for them to kind of have to navigate it too, as hard as I'm sure it still is for you.
No, I think so. I think it's, for me, it's, even though I didn't always realize it, it's been my whole life that I've felt this way or noticed things about myself. And so for them, there is, no matter what you do as a parent, you're thinking, oh, when they get older, they're going to be like this. And then at 16, they're going to learn how to drive. And you just make in your mind like what this life is going to be like. And so I think that was hard for them to be like, oh, in my mind, my life for Sallie was like, oh, she's eventually going to get married in the temple. And then she's going to have kids. And then it's going to be like this. And then me telling them that and then thinking, okay, a lot of things you don't realize, I think, are plugged into that. Where even I remember being a little kid and like in Young Women's, you'd be like, write down all the qualities you want in a husband. And it's even that exercise, I think is relatively harmless. But basically you're thinking then, oh, what will I be like in the future? What will I think my future will be like? And you start to think that it really is how it's going to be. Or even just stuff like, oh, I'm going to be an astronaut. You just start to think, oh, maybe I will be. Yeah. And so I think that was hard for them where they thought all their kids are going to have these certain kind of lives and be like, oh, that actually isn't what probably at least one of them is going to be like. And so I do think, that was probably pretty hard for them to be like, oh, this life that I imagined where all these steps are laid out and everything's going to work out great. It's like, now we don't really know. It's unknown. And so, I think that was scary for them a little bit and hard to think about, oh, what will it be like? It'll be different than what I thought.
Okay, I have a couple follow-up questions.
Yeah.
A lot of times we talk about the disadvantages that might come from being a minority, and you shared a lot of those, some like hard experiences. I am curious if you feel like there's any privileges or strengths that come from those same things that we might say bring you disadvantages. What are the privileges and strengths of being Chinese? What are the privileges and strengths that you've had as being lesbian? Can you think of any?
Yeah, so one of the things I think about for the racial diversity at least, that kind of feeds into the other one is you notice that you're different, but also that's okay because you start to realize as you get older, you are different. Like your friends, you like them, but you're like, wow, I would not do that. Or, wow, that's interesting. I never thought of that. You realize how different people really are, even if they look certain ways. But even looking certain ways, like there's not very many people who look exactly the same, except for twins or like some doppelgangers. But mostly people do look quite different from each other. And so I think early on that kind of forces you to be like, I am different and grapple with that early and decide how you're going to deal with that. And so I think that kind of helped me when I realized that I was lesbian. I was like, I guess this does make me different. But I was like, I have been different my whole life. And it's okay if this is also something different about me. I'm used to being different or people maybe making presumptions about me for whatever reason or any direction. But I was like, I am used to that. And so I think, like, it's fine. Like, I can do it again.
Yeah, you seem very confident in that way. So, like, by having to navigate that earlier on, because we all have to figure that out, be confident in our own skin. Because, like you said, we all kind of have something we're figuring out. So you feel like by being able to navigate that earlier on, it helps you navigate other things later on, too.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think another thing is it really helps you think about your story a little bit, which everyone does have one. And this is something interesting. I was listening to this other podcast where they talked about how it's really important to tell your child stories about your family meaning not them necessarily as a kid, although that's great, but mostly like stuff about their ancestors. So stuff like, oh, for example, me, your great whatever grandpa, he came over from Ireland during the potato famine because there was no food in Ireland and there was work in America. So he came here and the work available was the railroad. So he worked on the railroad and he worked on it until there was no more work for the railroad, which it ended in Promontory, Utah, which is near where I lived. So he stayed in Utah because he was already there, and there was the eldest pioneers had already come there. So he was like, "There's people here. I'll just stay here." And so he married somebody eventually, right? And then they stayed in Utah. Even stuff like that, they said it really instills in your children a sense of who they are and how they're connected to the world, and also what kind of people are we? Are we the kind of people that wage war on another family because we hate them, or are we the kind of people who, even just that story, like, what does it tell you? It tells you, like, oh, when things are hard, you need to go find another solution.
Yeah.
Well, that's the story you want to tell or not. That is what the story is.
Yeah.
And I think being someone who is different for whatever reason, you do start to think about your story and you start to think about, what is a story about me? And what do I want it to say about me? What do I want to tell people about my story? What do I want it to mean? So I think that's another strength that you can have, is you can really start to think about your story, which can apply to anybody. But again, you're forced to confront it earlier on, where you start to think about it a little bit more and think about what you want that to be.
That's pretty cool. That's a cool story from your family. Do you know anything about your biological family?
No, I do not. I was
No record or
dropped off
anything?
at, I can't remember now. I get them mixed up. Maybe a police station, but maybe it was an orphanage, but maybe it's a train station. I don't remember. Some public
So
place.
you have
where
no
people walk
access
by.
to a story.
No. So my sister, who was adopted in the U.S. through LDS Family Services or whatever that was called, was able to find her biological mom, but that's a different setup where
Yeah,
you can
very
go find
different.
out if you're 18 and that kind of thing. But the rest of us, no. There's probably no
Nothing.
way to really do it unless you want to like genetically test everybody, and that's if they didn't die. So it's not feasible to test like a bajillion people.
Yeah. Okay, so Ireland. That's your story. That's your people.
Yeah, so that, I don't know my biological parents. I have no idea what their story is, which I'm sure they had a very interesting story, but there's no way for me to connect to that.
Okay, other question that I'm thinking about too is, do you feel like there's any common misconceptions that people place on you? And with that, is there anything that you love to tell to the audience? Here is not specifically LDS. It's like just Utah. We're trying to create belonging in Utah. So is there anything that you would say to your community in Utah?
Yeah, I think it helps to be curious about the right things, which sounds mean. I don't want to try to make you feel super self-conscious about, oh no, I can't ask this question.
Yeah.
But I don't mind when people ask like where I'm from or whatever, but also I'm like, that is only one part of me, which even if I was like, let's say I was raised in a family that was like an immigrant family, so it was more like had more Chinese culture in me raising up. I think it's good to ask about people's culture, but it's also good to just know them so that they don't just become the face of something. And so it's like, what were your Christmas traditions? Or what was this like growing up? And maybe they didn't celebrate Christmas, but maybe they'll tell you what they did and you can ask more about that. Yeah. And so I think being curious, and it's okay if you say some stuff sometimes that you're like, oh, that was dumb.
Yeah.
But I think your sincerity of being curious about them as a person and not as some kind of like tokens, whatever, fill in the blank, I think can really help where they feel like, oh, you want to get to know me. Yeah. And I think that can really make a difference because, again, we're all different and it just helps to ask questions and get to really know somebody.
Yeah. In our class, we use the term clumsy curiosity. So be willing to, like you said, if you're coming from a place of genuineness, people know that. If you're like, where are you from? No, but where are you from?
Yeah.
And then you're like, where are your people from? You're not trying to get to know me. You're trying to ask, what's my ethnicity? So you can either ask that or get to know me as a person because I want you to care about me as a person. So we always say clumsy curiosity. Be okay to be clumsy in your curiosity, but make sure it's genuine and that you care about the individual. Okay. Yeah. Any other things with that? Any other misconceptions maybe on the queer side? Do you like to use the word queer or do you not like that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that word. I'll be honest, I'm new to all this.
But I get it too. That was like a derogatory word to use towards someone that is gay, right? Mm-hmm. But the queer community has then chosen to take that name back and use it in a good way. So if you hear the word queer, no, that's not used as a bad term anymore, even though I choose not to use that word around like an older generation because I think that it comes across in that way. And so it is hard to change, especially if we don't hear it a lot. But
yeah.
I thought I'd just share that. Anyway, any other misconceptions or things about being lesbian that you feel would be helpful to share?
Yeah, I think some of the ones I might have had before, I'm not so sure about people right now, like other people that I know, but for me, I do think I was very obsessed with that being their whole identity, which it is an important part of the identity, and obviously it makes a difference in your life, but just like a racial identity, like it shouldn't be everything, which again, I'm speaking more to me and how I was. Like I said, with that friend in China where I was like, oh no, can I not be friends with this person?
Yeah.
Because of the singular thing that I would never have ever found out any other way, so I would have still been their friend, and it didn't really ever come up.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, that can sometimes be hard. If someone wants to make that like the forefront of the personality, that's fine, that's great. But when you meet somebody, I think sometimes people can't get over that sometimes. And it's, yeah, that plays a part in who I'll be and what kind of life I might have. But also it's like there's all these other things about me, that my hobbies that I like, or things that I have done, or things I don't like, or whatever. So I think that can also be something sometimes where people feel like that's the whole thing. Also, this thing, I think this might be more outdated. This might be like a generation before me now. But there was this kind of fear that I heard and then incorporated a little into my life at one point, where I thought, like, if someone's a lesbian, I don't think I should be alone with them ever, like scared, which is interesting because it's a bit of a holdover fear from, oh, I shouldn't be alone with a grown guy. That was warned, like, careful if you get on a subway at night and there's only men, like maybe get off the train or maybe do, and which is like somewhat warranted. It depends on the situation. Yeah. But I think it's a little bit of that holdover fear of, I don't know what to do with this thing where I know what to do with guys who like me. I don't know what to do if a girl likes me, and vice versa for guys. Which, again, I think is a generation removed from me. I don't really think people my age think like that quite as much, but some people might.
Yeah.
But I think that is really a harmful thing to think, because it reduces you down to only your sexual identity, and it assumes that you're like some kind of predator person. And I would not even hit on anybody who I wasn't pretty sure was like also lesbian, or maybe I would, like, if I had a friend that I liked, I wouldn't try to like date them if I knew that they were straight, because what is the point of that? It's kind of like trying to date somebody who you know is in a relationship with someone. It's like, yeah, you can, but it's not a great move.
I do think that still is a little bit a part of this generation. I don't think it's as much, I agree, but I remember being in high school and my undergrad, and there were people that were gay, and it was like, okay, just be careful. So, interesting. Okay, I have 2 last questions. I already said that, but I thought of another one because we didn't really touch on it. And you might not, I don't know if you really want to talk about it all, but I would love to know, like, how do you feel like you navigate dissonance that you might feel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. At this point in my life, I have done a lot of thinking and praying, but also I have not done the research. I have watched videos of people who've done the research, but they're like, they have degrees and they're accredited and they've done PhDs and like Hebrew studies and stuff. So they're people who actually know what they're talking about. And some of the passages in the Bible, which a lot of people use within the church and also within kind of the evangelical community, that they usually throw out where they're like, this shows that you shouldn't be a homosexual. It's against God.
Yeah.
A lot of at least from what we can tell, a lot of how that came to be and what that actually meant in that time frame is not what it means now. One of them, I think in the Old Testament, it was a lot to do with power dynamics. And it only talks about men and doesn't talk about women, because women were not considered people. They were like kind of like property or wives or daughters, but they weren't people, and they also had no power, so it didn't matter if they were doing whatever. It's kind of like dogs playing with each other. Who cares? They're both dogs. Like, what does it matter? And so there's that. And then I think there's one in the New Testament, like an epistle or something, and that one also was a different discussion altogether, and that apostle was very against all sex of any kind. He's like, wish nobody would ever have sex. You have to have babies, you know? And so, like, again, maybe you believe whatever about current stuff, but at least in the Bible, that's not really what it was meant to say at the time to those people. You can interpret it to be whatever you want it to be now, but if you're going to cherry pick, then I'll cherry pick too, kind of thing. So I think, like, a lot of stuff is just actually what you think about it. So for me, that really helped to understand, like, what that meant when it was said to those people at that time. And I also... a hot take for this area. I think it's fine to cherry pick a little bit of religion. I think we all do it anyway. And I think things that make sense and work for you is what's going to work for you. I often think if you're an Israelite and you ate pork, do you think Jesus would not send you to heaven? Because that's not a rule anymore, but it was then. Not to say that this isn't something you can think whatever you want about it, but also it's just like life is complicated. And things that sometimes make a lot of sense to us is not what's going to make sense in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years.
100%.
And so for me, I did have a little bit of some dissonance for a while, but after thinking about it more, I was like, I don't feel like this is something that I chose at any point. It would be obviously a lot easier if I just chose to be straight, like kind of mainstream media and just kind of do my thing there. But I'm like, this is something that is just who I am, and I can't really change anything about it. Yeah, I could marry a guy and then just basically just have a great roommate.
Yeah. But what would that mean for him?
But yeah, like that's not really fair to him to marry somebody that you're not really in love with.
Yeah.
And it's also not fair to me because I'm like, I think I deserve to be happy and be with somebody that I love. And so for me, I don't think God would make me this way, or however you want to phrase it, God set up the world this way or whatever, and then also want to punish me for it. And so I'm like, this is something that, at least to me, I'm like, this is something that makes me happy. I see it as something good. I try to be like a good friend in my relationships. I try to be a good sister, a good daughter, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, I think I would be like I would try to be like a good girlfriend or partner to somebody. And so I don't see, for me at least, I'm like, I don't really get how that's bad in any way. I don't see anything that's super harmful about it. And so for me, I'm like, to me, it's like, this is something that I don't really get it. I think there's some confusion around it. That's just me. And so for me, it's not really a huge issue because to me, I'm like, I don't think we really understand what's really going on there. And this is what I understand about me and my life.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I feel like, lose a relationship with higher power or with God during this. And you feel like you didn't lose that relationship.
Yeah, I think it just changed what I thought about God. Like, I think when I was younger, I really focused on the rules, a little bit more like detail oriented and stuff. And so I think that's what I really honed in on.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, I always thought, oh, these are the rules and this is how God is. Like, got like this checklist. Did you do this one or not?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just don't really think that's how it works. And life is so complex and things are so complex and there's all
Society's
sorts of
changed.
Yeah, and there's even just things that's so simple. Oh, we should serve others. Okay, if you serve others but you're resentful the whole time, are you really getting bonus points for that in heaven? And also, why not though? Because you still did do something good. So if the person was just things like something as simple as that, like it's very complex if you think too much about it. And so I'm like, things that seem so straightforward to some people, to me is like, well, I don't really think it's even that way anyway. And so I think, yeah, it's helped me to have more relationship with somebody who I would consider more of a normal like person, if that makes sense, and how a person would really view you and less of a rubric. Did you do this or not?
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. You just seem so hopeful and comfortable and confident in what you think.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, were you going to ask something?
No, I think that's a strength. I think that's a privilege.
Thanks. I think it's helped when I think about what I really think.
Okay, lastly, because we're running out of time, I want to talk about where you feel like you've found belonging and why. What does belonging look like for you?
Yeah, I think it has been a lot with the people that I have come to know, like my friends and my family. And I think it might feel obvious to you, but I do think when someone reiterates how they feel, it can make a difference. Because like I said, when I was younger, there's a lot of people very worried about the gay marriage thing. And they may have changed their minds, but I don't know. And I can guess, I don't think we really ever talked about it a ton as a family, but I can guess where some of my aunts and uncles might have felt at the time. And I think a lot of them, their feelings have changed. And some of them have expressed that to me, which I have found very helpful because we didn't talk about it a lot. And we haven't really talked a lot about it since. So for all I know, the last thing I have to go off of is this last thing you said. Yeah. Being affirmative about that when people talk to you about it, if they ever do, can be really helpful. Because I've changed my opinions and stuff, and so it would be my guess is they probably have also changed many of them, but you wouldn't know unless they told you. So I think it's helpful to tell people, and not to, you don't have to like be super crazy about it.
Yeah.
But I think it is helpful that if someone were to tell you, you can read the room a little bit on how they're feeling. If they're more hesitant about it, you can be a little bit more gentle in what you say. Whereas if there's like matter of fact, you can be like, oh, okay, so they're taking this in stride. You can follow the lead. But I think not making it a whole thing that's shocking. Sometimes I have told a couple people and they've been very shocked. I think partly because I don't maybe look gay, whatever that would be for you. I think also because a lot of times they'd ask, why would you come to BYU? And I was like, and I tell them, but I was like, even that comment portrays how some people might think about the feeling at BYU in the atmosphere, which is sad because I don't think it has to be that way. Like I said, I don't think it really has to be that big of a issue for a lot of people. Maybe it is for you, but it doesn't, I don't think it has to be. And so I think it's sad that's how people view it for other people as well. And I don't think they meant it in a mean way like you should leave, but I think they're in a way that were like, why would you want to be here? Or like, why wouldn't you pick somewhere else to go for law school? Which I had a lot of like reasons for wanting to come here, but I also, like I said, had some like hesitancies around it. So I think people thinking about that, and also if you did know someone like that, to try and support them as much as you feel like you can. Yeah. And I think that goes a long ways to the atmosphere of it, because lots of people listen to things, and a lot of things sometimes imply messages you don't mean them to imply.
Yeah, that was a good insight. Thank you so much for coming. You're wonderful.
Of course.
It was really fun.
It was fun to talk about this.